Now, a few general notes around debugging that are also important. When you activate, it's important that you actually activate a flow and test it like in the actual database, not just in debug. The reason is when you debug, you are testing the flow only. So if you have a record triggered flow to do something after a record is created, that's the logic in the flow is the only thing that you are testing. But as part of a transaction, there might be some other processes that are running that could interfere with this flow. So if you for example have a validation rule or a process in a process builder, or a trigger, and like an Apex trigger. If all of these things are happening on the same record, and all of them are meeting the conditions and all of them are running, when you actually create it in the database, all of them are going to run, and an error might happen on one of those. It doesn't necessarily happen in the flow that we built. But if you debug the flow, you're only testing that logic, not the other processes. So it's important that you debug and test, and then after that you activate and you actually test it in an actual record in the database. Another thing that's important is that if you create a scheduled triggered flow, you can monitor scheduled jobs. When you create a scheduled triggered flow, and you activate it, it automatically creates a job for each time this is going to run. If you run it daily, then every day there is going to be a new job created. And to see, you can see that in the scheduled jobs. If you go to setup and then you search for scheduled jobs, this is where you would see things that are running on daily basis or weekly basis. These processes are going to show up here. If you have a scheduled path in a record triggered flow, however, you're going to see this under time-based workflow. So if you have a record triggered flow and then you add a scheduled path to run 10 hours later or so, it's going to show up under time-based workflow. And you can just go here and then you can click search. You don't have to add any filters here, but you could if you want to show you anything that's going to happen after a certain number of hours or days. Next, we have the consumption logs. We talked about governor limits before. We'd like to keep an eye on DML statements, SOQL queries. You can read these logs in flows. So let's take, for example, this flow that we created earlier, update tier on create / update. After we actually click debug and we run it, after we run it, then we have this option here. We have basic debug log. Next to it, there is this gear icon. If you click on that, you will see these options. One of them is show governor limit consumption. And because we have a create element here, after we click this, notice that the limits are going to show up. If we click that, then it's going to say down here, DML statements is 1 out of 150. DML rows, this is how many we can create. It's 1 out of 10,000 rows. You can also show API names, and you're going to see it on this create event. It's create space event. That's the label. If you click that, now it's create underscore event. That's the API name. And then we have also the option show transaction boundaries. I'm not sure what this does, but I mean, if we need to read more information, perhaps in some other flow, it's going to show us some more information. Next, we have log errors in an object. One of the practices that we can do is to create a flow error custom object in which we could log information like the error message, the running user, things like that. And then when you create a fault path, then that fault path automatically creates an error log or a record on that object, and then you can use it to run some analysis perhaps, or of that sort. That could be helpful. Next, we have the error emails. Whenever a flow crashes, it's going to send out an email. That email goes out to the person who last edited the flow. The person who last modified the flow is the one who is going to receive the error message. We could change that. We can change that from process automation settings. If you go here and you look at this option, send the process or flow error email to, we have two options: user who last modified the process or flow, and then the other option is Apex exception email recipients. If we keep it like the default value is user who last modified, sometimes, and as a matter of fact, it's more often than not, if we have more than one admin, we usually, like, if it's as an implementation partner, then we may have multiple consultants working on this, and I'd like all of the team to receive that error email so that one of us is going to attend to it first. Or if you're even working with a customer, there might be another admin on the team, or probably management on the team that would like to be notified about things like this, potentially. You could change it to Apex exception email recipients in that case. And to specify which recipients, we're going to go to this Apex exception email in the settings as well. And this is where you can add Salesforce user to select the list of users that you would like to receive this email. If you'd like to add an external user as well, you can do that here. So this is what we just looked at. We can set Apex exception email recipients. A couple of other notes here. When you deploy an active flow, if you build a flow in a sandbox and then you deploy that to a production environment, if the flow is active in the sandbox, it's going to be deployed in inactive status in production. You will have to go and activate that. I believe there is an option to just a setting to allow it to go with active status right away, but I think it is safer to keep it as is and review things before you go ahead and activate the flow in production. The last thing is when you add a flow to a change set in a sandbox, it's gonna add the active version. If there is no active version, it's gonna pick up the most recent version.